Morning all. We're going to do a very quick video on how to make a sourdough starter. I've never made one before. I have tried, but then given up probably halfway through. But now we've got some time on our hands. It's a process that's going to take about 7 days to get the starter dough going and get the culture going. So what we're trying to do is enhance and create natural yeasts that are found in flowers. And this is going back a long time before we had all the dried yeasts or active yeasts. So what we can do is we'll make our own using two basic ingredients, which is I'm going to use some bread flour and plain flour. If you've got a rye flour or wholemeal flour or organic flour, they're even better because they've got a lot more natural yeasts in them. But these are the only two flours I've got in stock, so I'm just going to use them. And what we're going to do is a very simple method of equal measurements to flour and water. So I'm going to do two projects. For this you're going to need 2 jars, or if you haven't got 2 jars you can use just a plastic bowl or a little metal bowl, and then with a damp tea towel laid over the top of them. I'm going to use these Kilner jars, but what I've done, I've taken off the snap part of the lid and the plastic, but these are what help seal it, but you don't want to seal it because what will happen is once the yeast starts reacting you will see it rise up, and if it's securely tightened down you'll find it'll either explode or it'll come flying out the top and it'll create a big mess, which is great fun, but obviously it's not what you want because it can also kill your starter. This is a great project to do with the kids, so we're going to name our 2 starters that we're going to do. So we're going to call them Sydney and Cedric, and hopefully then what we're going to do, we're going to do 2 methods because there's quite a lot of recipes online using different methods. Some methods use yogurt and milk to start off, and then you add your flour and you feed it. Some methods where you throw half the starter away on day 1 and keep adding, and then you do the same process day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, where you're throwing half the starter away and adding fresh flour and water in. So we're going to do 2. We're going to do starter A, which is Sydney, and starter B, which is Cedric. So I have 2 different size jars, and that's the reason for is that starter A, we're going to use 40 grams of mix of bread flour and plain flour, so 20 grams of each. And in starter B, I'm just going to do 10 grams of each, so 10 grams of bread flour, 10 grams of plain flour. I will put a recipe online later. We'll be loading this up onto Teams as well for the students to follow. And like I say, it's a good little project to do now over the next week while we're all in lockdown, and we'll see how we're going. I'll post daily videos of feeding the starters and how they're doing. So the method is really simple. All we're going to do is add our flour into our jars, and then we're going to add some water. I've got some water that I'm going to measure out now, and I've got a little thermometer in there, which I'll try and show you a bit better now. I'll move my jars. I've just put a thermometer inside. You want tepid water. This one's sat about 25 degrees, between 25 and 26 degrees. Don't worry if you haven't got a thermometer, you can use little thermometers you have in your medical kits, but ultimately just leave your water, if you haven't got a thermometer, just bring it out, pour your water out, leave it at room temperature for a few hours, and it'll settle in the temperature of the room. If your kitchen, especially in that weather we've got at the moment, it should sit around the 19-20 mark, which again you can add a little bit of warm water just to bring it up. You don't want to kill the flour and the natural yeast, so again, just if you're unsure, just leave it for a few hours on your bench and use it. A lot of recipes say use around 25-26 degree water temperature, but it's an experiment and we're going to see how it works, and if it doesn't work, there's nothing to cry about. So basically what we're going to do, you're going to need, I'm using Kilner jars, and like I say, I've taken off the ring. You can just use wherever they've gone. If you're getting to the end of your pickled onion jars, wash them out and just use these lids. I think they're mason jars they're called. But then if you haven't got that, just use a bowl and a wet tea towel. You're going to need to leave it somewhere not in direct sunlight and somewhere that you can access it each day. I've done myself on my laser, which, you know, if you want me to make you some, I can. They're a couple of quid, I'll send them over. But I've just done a little tag that's saying feed me please. So each day I don't forget to feed the starter, and this is what you need to do. After day 1, you're going to do your flour mix and water. Pop it in your jar with a loose fitting lid. We'll come on to that shortly. And then day 2, we're going to do the same amount of mix and add that in. On jar A, I'm going to throw half the mix away and then add fresh mix in each day and see what we've got. I've got quite a good stock of flour. If you haven't got a good stock of flour, then I recommend we just do Project B, where we are just adding 20 grams of flour and 20 grams of tepid water each day, and hence why I've got a bigger jar to allow the starters to go. Once it gets active, it will rise and fall, hence why you need a lid that's not tight, and you may have to go up to a bigger jar using jar B. But again, you know, if you haven't got jars, you can use bowls. Have a look around, see what you got. So let's get going. Basically what we're going to do is in jar A, here I've already pre-measured 40 grams or 20 grams of bread flour, 20 grams of plain flour, giving me 40 grams of each. To that I'm going to add 40 grams of tepid water. So I'm just going to measure the water, and again, grams is the same as mils if you've got a measuring jug, and use that. So I'm just going to do slightly over poured there. So it's quite important to have the correct measurements, but again, you know, if you're a mil or two out, you know, I don't think it's going to hurt. I think it's going to know. So that I've got 40 grams of water, 40 grams of flour. Right, into jar A. Into Sydney. That's it. You can write your names on your starter. Every starter needs a name. It's a bit of fun. So if you are using a kilner jar, you can just pinch the back off and loosen the lid. Take off the plastic and take off the metal. Keep them safe, because you know, once this is finished, you can keep your starter. So your lid's not touched. So all I'm going to do, add my flour. And then add my water. Then using a whisk, or if you have a spatula, obviously make sure they fit the jar. To start off, I'm going to whisk, so I just want to incorporate and then I'm going to use the spatula afterwards. Just to scrape down. Give it a good tap off. Pop that somewhere safe. And then just use your spatula just to scrape down. Make sure you've got all the flour incorporated. And like I say, you can do this on a bigger scale if you want. I'm just using a small amount because I want to see, does it work? And if it doesn't work, I've not wasted too much flour. And just scrape it down as best as you can. Try and get the sides clean. And then what we're going to do, you just loosely put your lid on, and that's going to be jar A ready to go. I'm going to put that somewhere warm. So same with jar B. In here I've only got 10 grams of bread flour, 10 grams of plain flour, so 20 grams in total. That goes into my jar. And then we're going to measure 20 grams of tepid water. So I went over a little bit there, so I'm just going to re-measure. There we go. And again, same method. I'm just going to whisk it up. Make sure you incorporate all the flour and water together. That's it. I'm doing 2 because I just want to see which one works better. Because, like I say, there is a lot of recipes out there and a lot of methods you can follow. I've tried to pick the simplest one. I've not had much success with starter doughs in my time, but more to do because I've forgotten to feed them, or I've put them in a too hot a window. And done. Lid goes back on, and that's it. So we're going to leave jar A, jar B, Sydney and Cedric, and we'll see what happens with them over the next few days. And like I say, I'll be doing daily videos of them and how they're doing, and I'll update you tomorrow.